to reason. Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion. For the sake of the world, this delusion. It's gotta go. Yeah.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another Easter-tastic episode of the Atheist Experience. I am your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today, fresh from the Reason Rally in Washington, D.C., is Martin Wagner.
2 weeks fresh.
Fresh-ish. You haven't been on.
No, that's true. Yes, this is my first time since then.
Yeah,
it was
so
great
today...
fun, wonderful fun.
All right.
Very good.
Today is Easter Sunday, April 8th, 2012, and just to give a little nod to the dozens of people who are filling up my inbox and Facebook status, yes, I get it, this year's Jesus is not a zombie, he is a lich. We got that. Okay. We're a live call-in public access atheist television show based in Austin, Texas, dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We are also available through live streaming video at ustream.tv. The official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com. The Atheist Experience is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit organization which you can visit at www.atheist-community.org. You can also provide feedback by commenting on the official show, on the official blog at freethoughtblogs.com/axp, or email us at tv@atheist-community.org. Check out our other shows, The Nonprofits and The Godless Bitches, two audio-only podcasts which look like they're about to go on another big hiatus because Dillhunty International Studios will be closed for a bit as Matt jet sets around the world and rubs it around in all our faces. Yeah. Let's see. Today, El Arroyo happens to be closed for remodeling. So if you are
remodeling,
not for Easter. We actually checked on that.
That's fine then. Yes.
Yeah. So they're still cool with us.
I don't get this whole thing. It's like, hi, we're Christians and we stole this big holiday from the pagans, which means you can't eat today, or go shopping, or do anything out of the house. So.
But we'll still be going to dinner today, and we'll be going back to our old haunt, El Arroyo. Today
Wait. You just said...
Thread Gills.
Thread Gills.
301 Riverside.
I thought they hated us.
No, they just hate that one guy.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Well, we all hate that one guy.
Anyway,
that one guy was,
back to Thread Gills just today. Not next week. We'll be back at El Arroyo. So anyway, stop by because we have a bunch of guests here from the UT Secular Student Alliance. Hey guys, which means it's just going to be a big keg party or something.
Because that's what college kids do.
Yeah.
They just drink beer and tap kegs.
I'm hip to what the kids are thinking nowadays.
Yes, indeed, yes.
With their baggy jeans and stuff. We're old. Sean Faircloth, speaking of the Secular Student Alliance.
Speaking of old guys, let's just keep this going and let's just dig deeper.
He happens to be the Director of Strategy and Policy for the Richard Dawkins Foundation.
I love that.
And he will be speaking in Gearing Hall, room 105, on the UT campus at 7 p.m. this Thursday, April 12th. He is there to talk about his book, Attack of the Theocrats.
That's just north of the tower, just building like.
Yeah.
Just go up, see, look at the map.
So, happy Easter, everyone. How are you doing?
I am doing fine. Just fine, yes. It's kind of neat to be on. I didn't realize that my first day back on in forever was Easter.
Okay, and, well, at least it wasn't April Fool's Day. We got both of those holidays.
Yeah, and boy, you got the calls then. Let's not do that today.
What?
Well, not like that kind of thing.
Let's not spend half an hour on one call?
That kind of thing, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, let's get our idiot detectors in quickly so that like the red light comes up.
All right. I mean, people are split about that. Some people like the really long calls,
I know.
and some people
Yes,
hate
that's
them.
very true.
Some people get mad when we cut them off too early.
You
and
kind of have to
they're
gauge
like,
these
"Why'd
things as you
wind
go."
up talking to atheists all that time.
Right.
So
when before they don't like us talking because the atheists are taking up the show.
yeah.
So,
So,
you just
all
kinda
you
do
complainers, just watch it and shut up.
Yeah, really, it's free TV. So
Yeah.
Um,
So today being Easter, I guess you wanted me to do my thing before you talked a bit about the Reason Rally.
yeah, I wasn't going to say much about the Reason Rally because I
Okay.
mainly already blogged about it and Facebooked about it, and you can go to the AXP blog if you like and just scroll down a bit and read some more. But just to say, it was great fun and a really wonderful experience. I met a whole bunch of folks, wonderful people. Fans of the show would just pull me aside at random from around the country. So hi to all those people, hi to everybody who came to breakfast, and it was a very much of a funny, uplifting kind of event. We didn't really take itself too seriously. We couldn't because of how just heavy the rain and the wind was, and so we're all standing out there getting wet and freezing.
Okay.
But it was a big success for all of that, and I think it again gave that whole sense of community.
Cool.
So that's all
I'm
done
really
my
jealous.
bit now,
I mean,
so.
I don't go to these big international atheist events because, money. But
Well, yeah.
but I've had pretty
I tend to worry about the money part later.
pretty
Like, I
good
get home and then I'm
stability
like,
at my
uh-oh,
job
yeah.
for the last couple of years, and my wife is now employed, and I won't say where, but my T-shirt is a clue. And so
Someplace
maybe
where they do
we can
biohazard
start. Yeah, maybe we can start getting out a little more in future years.
You should, because everybody's asking me, it's like, who else from the show is here? Is Matt here? Is Russell here? Is
Yeah.
Tracy here? Everybody, and I'm like, no, I'm just kind of the only guy. I just sort of came out, so,
Okay, so today is Easter, and we're always year-round getting a question, which I think this is an appropriate day to talk about it, which is, did Jesus really exist? Or a lot of them are like, hey, I just watched this awesome movie called Zeitgeist, and did you know that Jesus didn't really exist? They phrase it in one of those ways. And we're not historians. In fact, a lot of the time, people will write in with questions that we have no qualifications to answer, but we do have we do know enough people with qualifications to sort of send them in their direction. One of the things that I think we can't repeat often enough is that Zeitgeist is a shitty movie with terrible, terrible scholarship relying on cranks like Acharya S., who says stuff to the effect, more or less, and I'm probably going to get this wrong and get flooded with emails, but to the effect that Jesus was definitely a deliberate hoax by a bunch of guys who knew exactly what they were doing and set out to scam people. And he was explicitly based on various gods like Mithras, consciously and deliberately. Those people are cranks, pretty much. And if you need to find out more, you can check out, I think, Zeitgeist Debunked and stuff like that. But there are serious scholars who fall on both sides of this issue, and just this past week, actually, I heard Bart Ehrman being interviewed by National Public Radio, and he was talking about his recent book, which is called, oh no, I don't have it up fast enough, but
I think it's just called something like Jesus historically.
yeah, well, I think it was just something like, was Jesus real?
Yeah,
and I
very
thought I
direct.
had it up in a tab already, but I don't. But I'm just going to say that Bart Ehrman definitely believes that Jesus was a real figure, and actually goes so far as to mock mythicists, who are the people who don't believe that, who think that Jesus was just made up out of whole cloth deliberately. And he's kind of got a point there, because there are a lot of really bad non-historians going on claiming stuff that they have no justification for. But at the same time, when I listened to his interview, his reasons for definitely believing in it sounded pretty weak to me. And one guy who agrees with me is Richard Carrier.
Richard Carrier,
who also has a
who
recent
gave
book
Ehrman with
out.
both barrels on his blog. I tell you, just really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that up, but we have it in the audience. The Carrier's recent book is called Proving History, Bayes' Theorem, and the Quest for the Historical Jesus. And here's a quick Amazon description. Almost all experts agree that the Jesus of the Bible is a composite of myth, legend, and some historical evidence. So what can we know about the real Jesus? For more than 150 years, scholars have attempted to answer this question. Unfortunately, the quest for the historical Jesus has produced as many different images of the original Jesus as the scholars who have studied the subject. The result is a confused mass of disparate opinions with no consensus view of what actually happened at the dawn of Christianity.
And you know, I think the whole thing, I have always thought that this huge debate about was there an actual historical Jesus is, to a very large part, a big red herring, right?
I agree.
Yeah, it's and it really kind of bugs me when I see people in the atheist camp take a position of almost as much of intractable,
certainty,
dogmatic certainty about no, there absolutely was no historical Jesus, no way, no day, not at all.
Right.
Because again, now that becomes, you've just shifted the burden of proof to yourself with that one.
Yeah.
But ultimately, whether or not there was an actual guy, flesh and blood dude walking around doing Jesus stuff back in the day is irrelevant to the big question, which is, does that fact
make the Bible accurate?
Yeah, prove that a God exists. Does the fact that we could maybe possibly point to an actual historical personage prove that any of the divine or supernatural claims that are made about him in the Gospels true? Just because we may or may not have evidence for historical Jesus doesn't mean we have anything about turning loaves into fishes, or resurrection, or walking on water, or appearing to the disciples after his resurrection as another guy, just for some prank or whatever. It's just very, very weird. It ultimately doesn't matter. There may have been an actual rabbi who inspired the character that was then later largely mythologized and fictionalized in various Gospels down the centuries, which happens, or not. But it still does. I mean, if we had a frickin', like Jesus' handprint in graffiti on a wall or something, that proves nothing in terms of Son of God claims.
Right, or
nothing.
Or a tomb that says, "Here is Jesus." Brother,
it's an interesting
here's
question.
The James or brother
it
of
is
Joseph.
An interesting question to contemplate.
In fact, I've made
from a historical
the point
standpoint
that you have on the blog a couple of times, and I compared Jesus to people like the Big Lebowski or Kramer, who are sort of based on real people. But actually, I came up with a more accessible example. Recently, which I think is what I'm going to be using from now on. There's this new movie coming out called Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter.
Which was a book.
Yeah, it was a book in 2010, and it's being produced, not directed, by Tim Burton. But, it's the kind of project you'd expect Tim Burton to be affiliated with. And so it's like, the question is basically, was Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter a real person? The answer is yes, as long as you understand.
Except for the hunting vampires part.
Yeah, except for the bit where he hunted vampires, because he's definitely based on a guy that we know is a real dude. But all the stuff that he is presumably going to do in the movie for your popcorn entertainment has nothing to do with what the real guy did. And so when I hear people like Bart Ehrman and Richard Carrier duking it out, first of all, I'm interested in what they have to say, because both of the guys are legitimate history scholars with like letters after their name.
And Richard Carrier is a huge fan of Ehrman's other books, like Jesus Interrupted and Misquoting Jesus, and says that's excellent. Ehrman is a top scholar in those, but he just disagrees with him on this issue.
Right. And so what I come away with mainly from Richard Carrier's response to Bart Ehrman, and I could read a little bit of it, but I already think I'm treading into some time. So I'm just going to say I'm plugging Richard Carrier's blog, which is at Free Thought Blogs, where all the cool atheist blogs are.
It's the cool kids table.
Yep. freethoughtblogs.com/carrier, and somewhere in there, in the recent posts, is a response to Bart Ehrman, which is worth reading, although I gotta say maybe a little dry. But what I get is that the people who say and who aren't just shilling Christianity, but still say, yeah, Jesus was a real guy, are basically saying there's not enough historical proof to definitely conclude that he wasn't a real guy. And the people who say that he was a mythicist and who aren't Acharya-est or Zeitgeist fans are actually, in order to debunk Jesus, they're saying there wasn't enough historical evidence to solidly prove that there was a Jesus. And I think this is just the thing about history, because there's really not a lot of contemporary stuff about Jesus. And so whether there was a dude named Jesus who inspired the writings of these guys 30 years after he supposedly dies, that may or may not be the case. But Jesus Christ, vampire hunter, definitely did not exist.
Ah.
And I think that's all I got to say. Let's start today with Troy in Detroit. How are you, Troy?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you, or Zombie Day, or Witch Day, or whatever you want to call
right?
it.
Yes. Or Vampire Hunter.
Actually, you got it wrong. This is Kirk Cameron calling.
Oh, really?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
So what's on your mind?
Any more Left Behind movies
my friend
coming?
kind of told me about your show. My friend's an atheist, and he wanted to call your show, but he thought it'd be better if I called your show because I'm a Christian, and he thought it'd be more funny if I called your show and brought up some kind of conversation. So I've been kind of pondering, and I got a pretty good question I wanted to ask you guys.
Okay.
All right.
So a lot of times I hear, I can't say the majority, but a lot of times I hear a lot of atheists tell me that, sorry, my phone sucks if you get feedback. But
No, you sound fine.
You sound great, yeah.
Yeah, you sound all right.
okay. I get a lot of atheists that tell me if there is a God, why do this God let bad stuff happen? You know, the famous question.
Yeah, problem of
Like,
evil. Right.
So my question is to the atheist is, if bad stuff happens in the world, like you realize that there's diseases and wars and poverty and, you know, a lot of things that happen to humanity, then as an atheist, why would you want to have children knowing that you're going to bring them into a world where possibly they might have a disease or born into a situation where there could be poverty or suffering? So it seems like the question kind of goes both ways. You're attacking this, why is there a God that allows bad things to happen, but at the same time, as an atheist, you're having children knowing for the fact that your child is going to die one day. And
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they are kind of. Well, you've got a kid, so you're the best to qualify to answer that question. So go ahead and explain.
Well, actually, first of all, I'm not that big on the problem of evil myself, because even if the problem of evil works, all it would prove is that there isn't a God who's not a dick. But since there's no evidence one way or the other for the existence of any gods, I mean, as far as we know, there's as much evidence for the Christian God as there is for, like, Dionysus, who's the Greek god of wine, and he's just into partying and boozing. And then the question is, why doesn't Dionysus stop bad things from happening?
Yeah.
He's busy.
Right.
But, I mean, second of all, obviously the fact that I'm concerned about there being evil in the world doesn't mean that I think it's, an utterly horrible place. I mean, for one thing, I happen to be privileged to live in 21st century America, where there's cool stuff like, plenty of food to eat and video games and...
a roof over your head. And
roof over my head. I mean, I have a pretty good life compared to... a person who is starving in Africa and dies in childbirth. So, the problem of evil is mainly, if there's an all-good God, then why do some people live just tragically short, horrible lives? And I'm not one of them, and I don't think my kid is going to be either. But that doesn't mean that it's not a concern for me. But again, that's not disproof of God.
Yeah. It's more a question of the whole thing of whether or not you think the world is such an awful, horrible place that you don't want to bring children into it isn't probably necessarily a theist or atheist question. That just may be your own, whatever your outlook is on that issue of, wanting, what's worthwhile about being a parent and whether or not you're up to the task.
Well, it just kind of seems like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it just kind of seems like, people question God's ethics, but at the same time, humans have this ethic. Well, since I have, a good income or can provide for my family, I'm going to bring this child into the world, and then maybe the child is born with multiple sclerosis or some kind of disease.
Yeah, I mean, that's life isn't perfect.
You the right to have your ethics opposed to God's ethics, saying that, well, my ethics are cool because I have a good income and a good job.
Well, in our case, since we don't believe a God exists, so we don't compare our ethics to that of a being that we consider to be mythical.
Right, except hypothetically,
your first statement where you said, well, the Christian God's a dick. It just seems kind of funny that your questioning is ethics, but at the same time you're still having your own ethics, which to some people can be kind of sadist or immoral. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, do you agree with every decision that God makes or decrees in the biblical stories?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, if God were to drop by and say, "Hey, Troy, I want you to kill your son for me," would you do that?
So you're going back to the story of Abraham. Yeah, that's definitely.
Well, I mean, you said that you agreed with every moral command and decision that God made in the Bible, so inclusively. So going back to the Old Testament shouldn't matter because it's in there. So if what you're saying is that you agree with every decision and every instruction on a moral basis that your God makes, then you would have to agree with those that say, for example, in those Old Testament commandments, like disobedient children should be taken out and stoned, or you shouldn't wear blended fabrics, or eat shellfish, and all the ones that today, to a modern sensibility, where presumably we're using our, human, post-enlightenment, maybe secular ethics, we think, well, those are kind of silly things to have rules about.
Particularly, the thing with ethics, though, is that you're saying that I don't have to agree with God's ethics to agree with the Bible to say that I believe it literally. No, I think it's crazy and stupid that God has these rules, but who am I to say what God wants to do? He can do whatever he wants.
So you would kill your son?
I'm saying that if God commanded something, he's God, who am I to question his ethics?
So the answer is yes.
Just like you're saying, you can do your own thing because you don't believe in God, so that way you create your own ethics based on your own standards. Who am I to judge your ethics because you created your own ethics? You know what I'm saying?
So I think that a person who would agree to kill their son based on a vision and no explanation would be a horrible person.
Yeah.
And I think
that's your opinion, though.
Okay.
Well, okay. Why would you not be a horrible person to murder a member of your own family, especially your own child, because you were told to do so by an authority figure? And you didn't take a minute to think, wait a minute, is this thing the authority figure telling me to do right or wrong, and should I obey it simply because he is the authority figure?
But did he kill his son?
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, because the point of that story is that he was willing to do it unquestionably.
He did it. He was obedient. That was the lesson in the story.
That's right.
It's good to be that obedient, right?
So the idea where biblical ethics is concerned, what you're saying is that the correct way to be, the morally correct way to be, is unquestionably obedient, no matter how reprehensible the moral command is. And whether or not God steps in the last minute and goes, just kidding, that's immaterial to the main issue, which is if God tells you to do it, you got to do it. If God tells you to put a gun to your...
the United States army do that every day when they...
No, soldiers are not required to obey what are illegal or immoral commands.
Yeah, and in fact, the leaders of the country who issue those orders are ultimately intended, at least, to be held accountable. And if they don't wind up being held accountable by their own country, they get subjected to something like the Nuremberg trials after the war, where they get taken in for war crimes. There is no ultimate authority in usual human ethics.
Yeah, and there's no situation. I mean, a CO on in any sort of military situation isn't this infallible God. He has rules that he has to obey. He has oversight. A God has no oversight. I mean, a God is as high. I mean, the buck stops there. So if the God is telling you to do something, and you're like, this goes against absolutely everything that I know in my heart and to be right, and that where I can look, I can actually see and have empirical, straightforward, right there in front of my eyes evidence that the consequences of this act would be devastating and destructive and bad. If the God tells me to do it, I have to ignore all of that and go with it anyway. So why is that sort of blind obedience to authority anything at all resembling morality? Why is that a moral way to be? Why consider that to be the right way to be? If you know something's wrong, as I said, take your wife, take your child, take a loved, or take a random stranger on the street and do a completely gratuitously horrible thing to them. Because I'm God and I'm testing you to see if you obey me. Seems to me that makes that God, a big fat douche. I mean, just an absolutely horrible being,
I totally
abominable.
Agree with you.
Okay,
on that
then.
One,
all right. But that's the thing. That's it.
That's
Abraham and
Isaac.
Isaac.
Is not Christianity.
Well, we agree with that, but
definitely, dude. We definitely agree with that.
Okay, well then I think we're done.
Is not logical. It's not rational.
Keep going.
All right, you're follow that train of thought. Just.
So I mean, I'm not trying to argue logic because that would be stupid. Because saying Jesus walked on water or Moses parted the Red Sea, that just sounds crazy, right?
Pretty crazy, yeah.
It sounds like stories.
Okay, so I'm not trying to argue that point. My point I'm trying to argue is that it seems like atheists pick and choose their own ethics based on their own moral experiences.
And so do Christians. They just call it.
Because they question a moral God, but at the same time, what is your standard of ethics? I mean, you see that just because America might have more materialistic things and you could have a better survival rate, doesn't mean that you could bring in a child and then your child could have a disease that you don't even know about. I mean, what is that, with Darwin?
Yeah, well, none of us thinks about, none of us predicts the future, right? I mean, yes, anything horrible could happen in anyone's life, including your own. If you have a child, there's no guarantee.
Why have children?
Well, because they might actually enjoy their life and they might enrich the lives of others around them.
Maybe you might want to be a parent.
To have a child knowing that he's going to die or maybe have a disease.
Well, you're going to die, so don't you think you could get diseases? Don't you think it's sick to stay alive when those things can happen to you?
Do you like being alive?
Where's the luck?
I mean, I'm already alive, but I'm saying I have a choice to bring a person into the world.
If you had a choice to go back in time and cancel out your own birth, would you do that?
Yeah.
What? So wait, ask me that question again.
I mean, if you had a choice to have never been born, would you decide that way?
Yeah, definitely, dude. This world sucks. So,
I'm glad that Christianity has brought so much meaning and happiness to your life.
Very bleak, then.
Yeah, I'm glad. Wow.
I mean, why in the heck would you bring? I mean, as an atheist, why in the heck would you? I mean, that sounds kind of sadistic too. I mean, that kind of sounds like a douche because just because you have a good life or whatever, you think your child is going to have a good life too.
I think it's
maybe
likely.
Your child might have some kind of mental illness or something, kills himself. I mean, that's kind of a douche too. So you're kind of like a sadistic god of your own self.
So do you think your parents are responsible for every bad thing that's happened to you also? I mean, as parents, you bring a child into the world.
Society and everything is responsible for what kind of person we are, not just our parents.
So they're also responsible for the good things that happen, right?
Just as sadistic as believing in a god. It's the same thing, man.
So you're comparing bringing a child into the world, not knowing whether they will have a good life, to actively giving people the order to kill or enslave other people. In your mind, that's the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much, because you're basically bringing a person in to eventually be killed. It will die eventually.
Well, all I can say
You know this whole thing a few minutes ago where you talked about, not being logical or rational? I think we're seeing some of that here.
All I can say is we have really different outlooks on life, and I think we're going to have to leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, you've told us you think the world is a miserable place. You don't seem to be a terribly happy person. I think that your problems run a lot deeper than the confusion between theistic and atheistic morality. And really, that's kind of where we can go.
It's not that. I'm just saying, like, you pick on God, but at the same time, it's like you can't give me a good answer about just because you might have privileges doesn't mean everyone has privileges.
But we already have answered that. We cannot promise a perfect life for ourselves or for anyone in it. But the point is that, all things considered, it's better to be alive than not alive. And at least when you are alive and bad things happen to you, you can work to improve them. You can work to improve things that are going on badly in your life. If you have a child, or if you have a relative or a good friend, or even someone in your community whose life is going very badly, you can pitch in and do things to help that person improve their lot. I mean, that's the whole thing that's our social contract. That's what we are as social beings. We lift one another up when each other are down.
Once you get to the New Testament, don't you think that that's the same thing there? I mean,
the New Testament that brings in eternal...
Testament, but you're not really talking about the New Testament, where the commandment is to turn the other cheek and to resist evil.
No, we're not talking about the New. From our perspective, we're not talking about Old Testament versus New Testament at all, because since we don't include either of those things in our ethical outlook on life, they're immaterial. What we're trying to show you is that we have just completely secular and rational bases for the kinds of things that we do and the reasons that we do them that don't require. I mean, just the reference to any sort of biblical ideas are immaterial. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. We can be good and nice and decent and kind to one another and help each other out when, if someone's life is not going well, someone has a horrible disease, that's why we have doctors. That's why we have people who, fund charities to help people who can't pay medical bills. That's why we have all of these things that we do for one another to help each other out. We can be that way as people on our own. We don't need a divine commandment for it. We don't need, to say, oh, well, here's one half of our holy book that has a list of rules, but the second half has a different list of rules which are nicer. And so we don't. None of that needs to be referenced anymore, because we've got each other, and we're all we need. And that's why it's worth it. And that's why this world doesn't have to be the horrible place you think it is. Because once you get rid of that superstition, and once you get rid of those old rules, you don't have that hanging over your life anymore. And you can see people as people.
Arguing the point that God allows bad things to happen, but we allow bad things to happen too. It's not really...
We do, but at least we can
hold... We're not omnipotent.
That's right, but at least when we do that, we know who's responsible and we can hold ourselves accountable, and we don't have to just shrug our shoulders and go, oh, well, God works in mysterious ways. I think we're done. Let's move on.
All right.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling, Troy.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I had a good time.
Hey,
just
say
by
hi
the way,
to your friend.
I'm not miserable, but I wanted to give you a good argument. So
okay. Well, we appreciate that.
I hope it caused good thoughts and good dialogue.
Troy, we appreciated the call. We really enjoyed the discussion.
Definitely some quotable stuff coming out of here. See ya.
Thanks.
Just a reminder to people who are local in Austin and just tuning into the show that El Arroyo is closed today, not for Easter, but for remodeling, and that if you are looking forward to going to dinner after the show today, you should come to Threadgills at 6 p.m. on 301 West Riverside Drive. Moving on, we have Randy in Las Vegas.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for waiting.
Hey, thanks. I love the show, guys. Just caught you guys on YouTube maybe 3 or 4 days ago.
All right.
And I was compelled to tell almost all of my friends about it. And everybody likes what you guys do, and either atheists or Christians or whatever religion. So I really appreciate what you guys do.
Well, we appreciate that. Thanks very much.
My comment is, I guess I would be considered an atheist by the definition that I don't, follow any theistic religion. However, I do sort of follow some of the intelligent design theories. And I think a lot of the guys who talk about intelligent design do it a disservice. When they say intelligent design, they all seem to refer to intelligent design, meaning there's an intelligent designer behind this design. And personally, I believe that the universe itself has probably always been here. I have no evidence to say that it hasn't. And I believe that the universe itself is intelligent. The fabric, whatever the fabric is that we call the universe, whatever it makes it up, the smallest piece of the entire universe, that one thing is just inherently intelligent, period.
So you're a pantheist.
I don't know who designed it. I don't know where it came from. It just appears that whatever existence started, this whole thing is just intelligent.
Well, that's pantheism, right?
I guess in a way, yeah.
Yeah, it's a kind of pantheism.
Believing that God is in everything, basically, or is everything.
Yeah, and
well, I don't even like to use that word God. That word God tends to get a little. I mean, for for conversation, I guess we can use whatever. Sure. But just that word has been hijacked and it has a bad connotation. So it's almost like a skeptic or conspiracy theory. Just existence is a lot more comfortable for myself.
Yeah, I can appreciate where you're coming from, but I think I'm not sure I agree with your desire to just anthropomorphize stuff. I mean, for one thing, I think that you're just mistaken about our understanding of some things. Like when you say the universe always existed and we have no reason to think it didn't, I mean, what do you think about the Big Bang then?
The first time I really had a good explanation when I heard Matt describe it on one of you guys' old podcasts on YouTube, and I guess from what I gather you guys think is that there was something here and it exploded and expanded outward. If I'm wrong, could you please educate me a little more?
I mean, essentially, yes. I mean, but the universe hasn't always existed in its present form, certainly, and what happened before the Big Bang, if that even means anything, is too complicated to, I mean, is
that's kind of
too far back in history for us to actually know anything about.
I mean, there is a limit to our actual knowledge of our origins right now. I mean, we don't have all the answers. I mean, that is first off the number one thing that anyone will tell you, especially with an extensive background in science. So like, we don't know it all yet.
But when you say the universe existed, you're not just talking. I mean, apparently what you're just saying is some cluster of matter that we now call the universe always existed.
Right.
Is that it?
Yeah.
What do you mean by intelligent?
Something, I could listen to like the unified field things and things on consciousness.
I know lots of people think there's a unified field theory without bringing that word into it. So what do you mean?
Personally, I believe just consciousness, some piece of existence that's aware of its own existence, and begins to expand and move outward.
How do you know that the universe has that? Because
I don't think he's saying he knows it. I think he's saying that this is an idea he's entertaining.
But as far as we know, consciousness and intelligence and sentience and stuff like that, it only exists, as far as we've ever seen, as the product of brains or brain-like processes, like we might describe a computer program as intelligent if we really stretch the definition. But those are already the end result of a complex evolutionary process. So what makes you think that the universe has this sort of, I mean, if you think it's intelligent, can we talk to it in some way? I mean, how would you know, how would you test this idea that you have?
I just remember hearing something from, I believe it was scientist Max Planck, and they were talking about the God particle. And they basically say that all atoms or molecules, all atoms only come into existence because of there is some form of consciousness which holds them together. For example, an atom.
I don't think that's what Planck says.
I don't think when you're talking about the God particle or the Higgs boson, they're not really talking about something that they think is. At least I haven't heard anyone in the scientific community refer to it as something they think is a sentient or a thinking or intelligent particle. But at least it's what they simply mean is. There's got to be a most basic particle of all particles from which everything else comes. I mean, there's got to be. Wait. Right? Or
actually,
no, I'm sorry.
Actually, it turns out Max Planck was probably a theist, or at least Wikipedians tell me that he said all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together.
That's the quote I was trying to find. There you go.
We must assume behind this force there exists the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. The mind is the matrix of all matter. But did he have any evidence for that, or is he just using his authority to say it?
Right, because he even right there he says he's assuming. So
right.
At that point, this is kind of where he's putting. here's where my scientific evidence for things stops, and this is where I'm now sort of moving into a belief perspective. And it's fine. I mean, if you're Max Planck and you want to say that, when you get right down into basic, from a scientific standpoint, you have to go, okay, but that's just an assumption that Planck is making because it's appealing to him. And is this to say that at no point ever in the future we might suddenly have a eureka moment and think, oh my goodness, all these particles and materials in the world are thinking sentient things? Well, you know, we don't know that yet. I don't think that is where the current research and evidence is leading us, but certainly at Max Planck time, and certainly, you know, we have Planck to thank for pretty much most of what we know and have built upon today in terms of physics and cosmology.
Well, that might be overstated.
Well, I mean, he was, you know, one of the big, big nibs of, in physics. He's, even he quantum there theory is admitting
the founder of quantum theory.
There we are.
Thanks, Wikipedia.
He is at least, even there, saying, I am making an assumption now.
Right.
And he admits it.
Hypothesis, an educated guess at that, you know, which everything was. I mean, at one time, the world being flat was pure science. So science is always evolving. But it seems I can see where they're coming from. That as of right now, I see no evidence that is not true. Just as much as I see no evidence that it is as much either.
But the point is,
a plausible hypothesis.
Well, the point is that the time to start thinking that an idea is really worthy of consideration and possibly actually a true idea is when the evidence here is, because remember, it's not, the burden of proof is on the positive claim, not the negative claim. So it's not that we don't have evidence that it isn't true, because I also don't have evidence that, there is not a ninja behind me right this minute, right? Because that's not how you think of these ideas. You think of them in terms of, once the evidence is for thinking sentient particles as the foundation of the universe, that's when we can start to take the idea seriously as anything more than it's an assumption, and it's an assumption that I'm making just because I find it appealing. But it's not scientific. It's not a thing we have evidence for, and you got to draw that distinction at that point.
What about ghosts? I would assume you guys don't believe in ghosts, being I don't think you believe that there's a life after death, or once you die, it's over. You don't believe in ghosts?
Nope.
I don't
believe. Wrong.
I could be wrong. I don't know that there's anything in biology to lend evidence to the idea that there's something about us that carries on after death. And here's an additional problem that I have with ghosts that I've actually gotten some of this, from some friends of mine on Facebook. We've talked about this a bit. And a fellow good buddy of mine, Tommy Ryan, came up with a wonderful set of questions about ghosts. I'm a guy and I die, right? And when I die, I suddenly find out, my goodness, not only did I have a soul, not only did I have a spirit, but look, I'm still around. I'm in the world, I'm in the environment, I'm part of this world, but I'm ghostly, I'm ethereal. So what do I do as a ghost? Do I immediately go and find my way to the nearest group of actual scientists and say, hello scientists, look at me, I'm a ghost, and I'm dead, and I'm still here, and stuff. Why don't we work together, and I'll give you all of this amazing first-hand evidence of the afterlife. You can document it, you can interview me, you can do a paper, and get your Nobel Prizes. This will be great. I can completely help you out with all of this ghostly afterlife business. Or do I do this? Do I hang around an empty, deserted house, randomly opening and closing doors, bumping lamps off tables,
rattling chains?
Yeah, rattling chains, and just scaring the piss out of some crazy old lady who nobody's going to believe anyway, and then going off. Am I just going to be this, big ethereal dead troll? Is that what I'm going to be? So that's
weren't the Ghostbusters just the worst scientists in the world?
But they had
but they show up and they've got, look guys, we've got absolute proof of life after death. Should we study it? No, let's put it in a trap.
Yeah. Well, that
and leave it there.
Yeah. Yes. So I'll believe in ghosts when I get slimed.
Right.
And not
right.
But
I think.
Thanks for calling. Again, it's just, speculation's all well and good, but we can't really say that we know things. And it's as appealing as it is to think that maybe there's some thought and mind, as part of the universe too. Just be aware that we're people, and the universe is a really big place. And the more we learn about it and the bigger it gets, the more sort of scary and cold and empty and remote it seems. And it's very natural for us as people to kind of want to put a face on that, to make it seem less scary and less big and less remote and, less full of vacuum and black holes. And, folks have been doing that, ever since, primitive man looked up and saw the sun and decided it was some god riding a chariot across the sky, and that's why we had a sun. And nowadays we look at, we try to dress that up in more scientific terms, but that's more based on an emotional human desire to not feel lonely and scared than it is like actual science. And so it's understandable. But, hey, who knows what we may discover someday. I don't think we're going to discover that, but who knows. But thanks for calling. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate the call.
You take care.
Bye, Randy.
Okay.
Moving on. We got like 10 minutes left. No, 15.
I don't know
almost
what
15.
we have 15, yes.
So Luka in New York.
Thanks for
Hello?
waiting.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
We're good.
Good. Hey Martin, did you enjoy my explanation of polyrhythms on that polyrhythm?
Oh, yes,
track?
Luka, thank you. And your jam was awesome, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Very good, yes.
All right. So today I wanted to ask your opinion about something relating to politics. Assuming that they nominate Romney, I think that as much credit as the Democrats should get for nominating the first black guy, Republicans should get credit for nominating the first non-Christian. Because my proposition would be that Mormonism is not a form of Christianity, and it's as much removed from Christianity as Christianity is removed from Judaism.
I wouldn't call it quite the same thing. There's ethnic minorities and people who have been subjected to horrible oppression and prejudice for that reason. It's kind of a different ball of wax than the Star Trek Club saying the Star Wars fan sucks. That's kind of a different sort of a...
You would give people credit for electing the first atheist president, would you?
Well,
wouldn't you?
in a sense, yeah, but I do think though that it's you can't quite compare it to like a racial thing. Is all I'm saying.
I don't know if I would say that Mormons are not Christians. I mean, they believe in Jesus. They believe that Jesus was divine. I think the angel Moroni came from the God who appeared as Jesus, right? So, Christians don't think that Mormons are Christians, but Mormons at least say, oh yeah, we're totally one of you guys.
Yeah.
So,
and Scientologists say they're not a cult, they say they're a religion, but let me put it this way. Jews have the Old Testament, and that makes them, that religion, and then Christians add an additional book, and that transforms them into Christians. And, Muslims have, believe the stuff in the Old Testament, with some slight modifications, and they have an additional book, and that changes them. And that's exactly the same process that Mormons are going through. Well, in a sense,
yeah. You have, the Jews with Bible 1, and then the Christians with Bible 2, and now the Mormons came up and made up their own Bible 3. But ultimately, I don't know.
How different is this really from the feuds that have gone on in the past between Catholics and Protestants? Right now they're getting along okay.
There was a huge thing when Kennedy got in for being Catholic. There are fundamentalist Protestants who don't...
just in terms of the literature that they believe to be divinely inspired, there's very little difference between the Christian Bible and the Protestant and the Catholic Bible. And I would dare any Mormon to say that I was a Mormon myself if, having started off as one, went on to say that an additional new book with completely fundamentally different rules, different concepts of what heaven is and how you get in, if I started that, if I could still be considered a Mormon.
I think it's fairly easy for some of the right-wing Christians to accept Mormon or Romney's kind of Mormonism just because they're so often in alliance. It was the Mormon Church that funded all that Proposition 8 propaganda in California. There's a lot of church lady moralism going on.
Moderate Christian on our ideas of the separation of church and state. But that doesn't mean that I'm therefore a moderate or he's therefore an atheist.
This is really sort of like it's one of those them issues where we, as atheists, we just kind of, these doctrinal disputes where we just sort of heat up the popcorn and watch because we don't care what variation of the invisible teapot you believe in. But in terms of what you may or may not think that traditional Christians think, I've found, because I get some of these newsletters in the mail, and kind of mainline rank and file Christians of just the regular sort don't think that Mormons Romnism is an issue, right? Is a real problem. But there are really hardline right-wing Christian fundamentalists, like hard right, like Brannon Howells and the Christian Worldview Network, for example, and they're like extremely out there, and so they are the ones who their newsletters talk about how evil Glenn Beck is. And
right.
he's not evil. He's not evil for the right reasons. He's evil for the reasons that they think he's evil, which is that he's Mormon.
He's a Mormon.
Yeah, so it just depends on some Christians. Mainstream Christians don't think it's really that big a deal. It just depends on how hardcore they are.
I will say this. I personally happen to be a liberal, and I'm not voting for Romney, but I don't speak for the ACA or for people in it. But as an atheist, I think Mormonism is dumb, but I think it's just as dumb as the other stuff. And given that we have all
different ways, so from the perspective of somebody who's dumb in a specific way, and that other way of being dumb is fundamentally different.
But my point is,
talking realistically about just as atheists, it's all.
But my point is, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah.
But my point is, I don't think that that Romney's Mormonism should be a particular issue. I think maybe a lot of Republicans will wind up thinking that, but that would be the last thing that I would judge Mitt Romney's candidacy
and think about how the right-wing Republican Christians are not exactly consistent in with other candidates either. I mean. These people who consider themselves to be really, really good right-wing Christians, think of how many of them support Gingrich, who is the guy who has cheated on every single wife he's ever had with whoever the next wife turned out to be.
Martin, that's an issue
but they think they're.
In which you interpret the same book.
Well, and you said the issue is that Mormons have a different book. Like I said, that's their problem, really. I mean, yes, I think it would be very interesting to see if the Republicans the people who are very strict about biblical accuracy, decided to vote in a Mormon who had their own made-up Bible. That would be an interesting, but it would be no different, I would think, or not much different than the double standards they usually employ to justify, well, we're really strict about this, except we'll make this, that, and the other thing an exception. It's they're never that consistent, and I don't think it's that big a deal.
I think there's actually greater variation between liberal and fundamentalist Christians than there is between a fundamentalist Christian and a fundamentalist Mormon, or if there is such a thing, a very far-right religious Mormon.
Yeah.
And for that matter, I think that there might not be that much.
The far-right Christian and the far-right Mormon both agree that each other is going to hell.
Well, they all think that. The Jehovah's Witnesses think there's only 144,000 people going to heaven, and everyone else, all the billions of them, are going to hell. But I think, I think we're running out of time.
The moral is that mix religion and politics together, and suddenly stupid happens.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And that's a good moral for any era.
But thanks, Luka, and send me some more band stuff on Facebook, all right?
Sounds good, Martin. Thanks so much. Have a good one, okay?
You take care.
Gonna try to squeeze in at least 2 more calls in the next 7-ish minutes. So we got...
So real quick ones, people.
Right. Jayce in Texas, Huntsville.
Awesome.
Hey.
I actually called in to share some things that I learned when I was in Christian school, actually. I was in a private Christian school until the middle of 8th grade when I got expelled. Not for any sort of atheist thing, but we won't go into that.
Well, whatever it was, it rocked. So,
congratulations.
Yeah, it's a good thing that I got out when I can. I'm now going to public school, have many more friends, and most of them are atheists or some other form. But one thing that I still laugh about today was something that was taught to us in our science book. We went over the whole creation of the universe thing in science, and evolution was debunked because of strange arguments that about horses and varying numbers of ribs and everything. But
trees that go all the way through the fossil layers, right?
Pygmies and dwarfs. Yeah.
No, I don't remember anything about trees through fossil layers. But
anyway, stupid stuff.
they had the definition of the word atheist in the science book, which I found odd, and their definition wasn't somebody who didn't believe in a god. an atheist was a person who hated the fact that there was one.
People unclear on the concept.
Yes, an atheist was someone who hated the fact that there was a God, which I find very, very odd. And that's why I didn't identify as an atheist at first. It's like, because, well, I don't hate the fact that there isn't one. I don't think there is one.
Well, that's actually very clever to sort of use that definitional thing on people who don't know better to try to keep people from coalescing around the concept.
Yeah.
Good one, Christians.
That's funny. That reminds me.
Exactly. And another thing that I thought was kind of funny is like they presented the idea that like why plants have thorns is because of like of the original sin and all that. Like if Adam and Eve had not committed the original sin, then there would be no plants with thorns. But how would like cacti survive? Because because they can't have broad leaves because water will just evaporate too quickly.
Of course.
So all
Science.
deserts be
You're
wasteland.
doing it wrong.
Nothing anywhere.
That's funny stuff.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, thanks for that insight into the world of Christian education.
And you've reminded me, I do actually have in my possession a Christian school textbook that a friend of mine who was in your circumstance when she was a teenager, she went a couple of years to a Christian school, and she gave me this. It's like, you have to see this. So I'll try to bring it on some show.
Okay.
Oh, I was there until from kindergarten up till halfway through 8th grade.
Wow. Well, you got out when the getting was good. So
you made it.
Good luck to you, man. Thanks for calling.
Yeah,
Gotta
thanks.
run. Take care.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
So long.
Before I take our last brief caller, I'm gonna just remind people one last time that dinner tonight is at Threadgill's, 301 Riverside Drive, instead of El Arroyo. Next week, back to our regular place. You know what? I'm just gonna be frustrated if we take a Christian as the last caller. So
Yeah, because we're gonna want to Bobby call us.
Bobby, call next week or hang on the line for a few minutes, and we'll talk to you after the show. But Bob has been waiting on the line so patiently, so you got like 2 minutes. What's up, Bob?
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and I'm an atheist. And in discussions that I have with creationists, where they believe that the dinosaurs walked with man and weren't allowed on the ark, and that when the ark came and there was 25 miles of water that crushed the dinosaurs into the soil to make fossils, and I go, wait a second, that's not how fossils are made. And they go, oh no, you don't know how it works, under 25 miles of water. And I'm like, science, you guys just make it up as you go. So I put on my theist hat, I say to them, well, why didn't God just create the earth 6,000 years ago with everything just the way it is, with the dinosaur fossils already in place? And, they never walked the earth. And they looked at me and they said, well, that's stupid. Why? Well, why?
It's so stupid that some very prominent Christian scholars and apologists have seriously put it forward. It's called the omphalos argument, which I think that's omphalos, right? It means belly button.
I think so. Yeah, I have to look it up, but yeah, it's funny when you'll bring up something that is simply just you can do this every once in a while. A slightly reworded version of a thing that they already believe, and they'll go, "Well, that's stupid," and I'm like, so it doesn't take it doesn't take a whole bunch to just. Or take their God's name out, plug a different God's name in, tell them the story, and then they'll tell you how stupid the story is when it refers to another God. So,
but thanks for calling,
thinking.
and you should check out talkorigins.org has a page that specifically debunks the idea that there ever was a worldwide flood.
And thanks to our audience.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, audience. And see you later, Bob. And great show, Martin.
Yeah, good to be back on.
Had a lot of fun.
Yes.
And tune in next week. See you at Threadgills.
Yay.